It's Zach Edey with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I am your host, Joe Jackson. Joining me as always is my co-host, Kraig Bowers. Following a Purdue 84-70 victory over Iowa, a game that Purdue never really was able to put away in the second half, but Iowa was never really able to creep. I think within 8 was the closest that it got in the second half. A game that Edey dominated. We'll talk about him. There's a lot of things to talk about, before football starts, and we appreciate everybody tuning in. I'll throw it to you, Kraig. Just kind of a key takeaways from the game for you as you watched.
I know we're going to get into stats later on, but obviously just the fact that they dominated rebounding to the point that they did. I think it was 50-24 in terms of total rebounds. So, I mean, that's just absolute dominance. And this team should be able to do that against certain teams they play. And we've seen it over and over again. Other than that, I really thought, I mean, obviously we need to start and end with Zach here. He finishes with 30 points and 18 rebounds, just a ridiculous stat line in terms of points and rebounding. I think it's the most 30-point doubles since Glenn Robinson in a row at 3 or something like that. So obviously just ridiculous stat lines from him. In the first half, it was really, even though Zach was still racking up points in the first half, beyond Zach, it was a real big team contribution. Mm-hmm. In the second half, that pool of who was contributing kind of shrunk. And we always need, look, Iowa's a really good offensive team. They always are. And if you go on a stretch where you don't hit some field goals, they are perfectly capable of making a run. So you kind of felt like Purdue fans have seen this enough. And I can always reference back to that home game where we had like a 19 or 20 point lead at the end, towards the end of the first half. And then Iowa came all the way back and won. And Iowa just offensively under Fran is going to be good. They're going to make a run at some point in time. Perkins was ridiculous today. But with that said, Purdue always just kind of kept them at arm's length, like never really let them back in, really similar to the IU game. And when you're on the road in the Big Ten, if you can get up 20 and just kind of keep them at arm's length at 10 points or so whenever they do make their run and the crowd gets behind them, that's about as good as you can hope for.
Yeah, Rowlett Boiler says any road win in the Big Ten is big, loving it. And I think that's true. Obviously, I think the second half, Purdue fans probably want a little bit more and would have liked to see closer to that 15-point lead the entire way. But on the road in the Big Ten is just tough to do. We've seen it already. Who had it here? JB we are halfway through our conference road games, sitting at 3-2. And obviously those 2 losses aren't ones that Purdue likes in general, with Nebraska and Northwestern being them. But at the same time, 3-2 right now on the road in the Big Ten. You take it. We just saw Wisconsin the other day get beat by Penn State on the road. Really any team can beat anybody this year, especially when you're on the road in the Big Ten. We've talked about the Big Ten has a down year kind of at the top with Purdue being elites. And then you have a couple teams you have 2 teams in Illinois and Wisconsin that seem good to maybe a little bit better. And then it's just kind of whatever the rest of the way. But at the same time, even the bottom teams, right there, they can give you trouble on any given night. Going to Edey, he had 18 rebounds and Iowa had 24. I think that right there, if you were to take out everything else and that was the only thing you looked at, it'd be a pretty safe bet that Purdue wins this game. Just absolutely dominant. What he is doing, we can't take for granted because he makes it look easy and Purdue runs stuff so well to get him the ball and all that stuff. But it's at the same time, it's this isn't normal. People don't do what he's been doing. No. He's insane. Purdue did such a good job. Let's just dive into him off the top here. Purdue did such a good job of just getting him the ball too. Iowa filtered through a little bit of single coverage, some traps, and even the timing of the traps, whether it be on the dribble, on the catch. didn't really matter. Edey just kind of tore it up. Had only 1 turnover today, 15 shot attempts, 15 free throw attempts, 10 of 15 for both of those. Just such good action of Purdue player, one of the Purdue guards, wings, understanding like, hey, Edey just can do what he wants right now. We don't need to force any shots. You saw a couple forced shots, but for the most part, it was passing up a decent to good look on the perimeter and being like, no, let's just get the ball to Edey down low, let him go to work. Just really good stuff. You saw, I know Hummel mentioned it on the podcast or on the broadcast. Getting the ball to Edey in the middle, that's one way to beat these double teams. It's just you get him in the middle of the lane, let him go quick. Freeman and Kricky for both have been good this year. They don't have it defensively to even come close to matching up with Edey. It's just, yeah, literally like kind of whatever Iowa threw at them, Purdue was able to counter, still get Edey the ball, and kind of just do what he wanted. So what are your thoughts, I guess, as we dive deeper into what Edey did today?
Well, like you said, I thought our guards did a really nice job of being patient. That was one of the key things I wrote in terms of keys to the game is they knew who was eating and where they were buttering their bread today. And I thought they did an extremely nice job of staying patient. Braden a few times picked up his dribble, looked like he might get trapped or might get caught up, and was just super patient about it and eventually found him with a lob. A couple of times kind of pivoted and gave him a little bounce pass. One of those was actually to TKR. TKR did a really nice job of sealing off and getting the angle, and then Smith pivoted and gave him a nice little bounce pass down low. But also, I thought our big-to-big passing was really good, and like I always want more of that. Every time I see TKR catch it like right above the free throw line and throw that high to low pass, I think First had one today as well.
Yeah.
I think that was from the baseline though, maybe. But I love when we do that big-to-big passing. I thought that was really effective. We had a few misfires, right? Like, Fletcher sent one into the outer realm at about 90 miles an hour, and I think Jones had a bad pass to Edey in there too. So, that entry passes to big men, as much as we feed Zach, there's going to be a few bad passes along the way. But by and large, I thought the guards and the bigs, when the play was called for, did a really, really nice job. One of those was out of a timeout, right? I think right at the end of the first half, there was a timeout. Iowa had the ball, and then they came down and went right into a set. I think TKR, it was TKR, I'm pretty sure, got it on the baseline and gave a nice little bounce pass to seal off by Zach down low to score two. I thought really nice job of primarily making good entry passes and getting the ball to Zach where he can score.
Yep. Brad Prather says, we're privileged to see a part of history being made with Zach Edey's dominance. And it's true. Like what years was Big Dog? Like you would know. What year?
Would have been mid 90s. I think maybe 91 to 95.
30-ish years ago. So maybe if you get lucky, you see a player like this once every 30 years right now at Purdue is kind of what it's been. Just can't say enough on what he's done. And just the ability. I know we both mentioned JB really quick said 92 to 94 for his when Big Dog was at Purdue. We both mentioned the guards being patient, getting the ball to Edey. Just also kind of the other way of like, I feel like it's almost a calming for them of like, they just know that they don't have to force. They know like, if they don't have to force, if they don't like it 100%, just be patient. They'll get the ball, they'll get a good shot. And that's what Purdue's offense is predicated on. It's getting good shots. And they do that more than basically everybody in the entire country. Really impressive to watch.
Even if it's not to Zach, right? They still have confidence they can find a good shot late in the shot clock. There was sometime in that first half, there was a play where it gets kicked out and then like swing to Lance, and Lance hits a three with like 2 seconds left on the shot clock or something like that. That was a really, really good look by him in that particular moment. So I just don't think there's a lot of panic. Smith still gets caught up at times and will throw a bad pass. But again, we've said it 1,000 times. When he's going to be creative and do that probing, every once in a while that's going to happen. I don't think that's so much panic as it is just every once in a while you're going to get caught up.
Yep. When Reem says happy there was no IU hangover. That was kind of one of my key points for the game was just like come out strong. They didn't have the greatest first few minutes, but after that, they really kicked it into gear. And that's that big stretch in the first half, that 15 minutes to 5 minute mark in the first half is when they kind of blew the game open and kept it from there. I'm happy to see that. Iowa's also been on they were on a 3-game winning streak. They've been playing better. This could have been a spot where if Purdue comes out super flat, after a big IU win, comes out super flat, Iowa gets super hot, and now you're trailing 8 instead of being even. And so when that push happens, now you push it to 3-point lead instead of 10, and things go from there. Anything else on Edey? I don't really. I think the next player we probably should hit on is Smith, but we can do some stats first.
No, I don't have it. Well, I mean, he was big defensively today too.
True.
I don't remember exactly how many blocks he finished with. But Iowa was having some success getting downhill and getting to the rim out of that, high ball screen pick and roll action. But where is? Okay, I clicked on home stats. My bad. So yeah, 4 blocks. I think there was one that didn't get accounted for on Perkins that I thought he got his fingertips on. Could have finished with 5, but he definitely altered that shot. And Perkins was going off, and there was a key stretch kind of later there in the game when I want to say the score was like somewhere between 10 and 11. He gets 2 blocks on Perkins in a row when he got downhill, and after he'd been having a lot of success before that. I thought there was kind of a special welcome to the real Big Ten moment. We've talked a lot about how good Freeman has been as a rookie, but Freeman tried to take Zach on in the first half one time, tried to body him up and turn around, and Zach I don't even think he jumped. He just swatted him hey there, little man, how you doing today?
Yeah. No, and that's where there's just levels to it. Freeman's been fantastic this year. Kraig's been really good for Iowa, and it's just it's not a fault to them that they're not Zach Edey, but at the same time, they just did not have a matchup for him at all. Let's get into some of the stats, and then we'll flow into some more of the players. So I'll just kind of skim through some of these. Purdue wins 84-70. They lead most of the game. I think it was 31 minutes of the game. Edey with 30 points, 18 rebounds, 4 blocks. Jones, 17 points, 6 rebounds, 4 or 9 from 3. Hit a couple really big ones, which we'll talk about too. Lawyer, 12 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. Braden, who we'll definitely hit on, 9 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, 4 turnovers. And then also every single player for Purdue scores, all 9 players, even Morton. He hits a little mid-range pull up there. Purdue shoots 9 of 26 from 3, which is 34.6%. Not insane night, but not a terrible night either. Purdue wins the rebounding 50-24, including 19-4 on the offensive glass. Turnovers is 11 for Purdue, 7 for Iowa. So Purdue does, for the most part, a pretty good job keeping that down. Fast break points, only 7 for Iowa, none for Purdue. 36 points in the paint for Purdue, 34 for Iowa. Last stat, 19 assists for Purdue, 15 for Iowa. Skim through, or I guess the other guy we should mention is Tony Perkins did have 24 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists for Iowa. 10 and 19 from the floor. Just really did a good job getting into the lane. We'll talk about that in a sec. Kraig, what stands out to you for the stat sheet?
I mean, I already mentioned the rebounding, obviously, but beyond that, again, there's been this. Okay, so bear with me for a second. There's been a little bit of a narrative of a comparison of this season to last season because of kind of when some of the losses have occurred throughout the season after being ranked number 1 on the road at a Big Ten opponent, that type of thing, that were somewhat paralleled last season. Never mind the fact that, if you actually look at the quality of opponent that Purdue beat this year in that non-conference schedule, it was significantly more difficult of a schedule. And they knocked off a lot of really high-quality teams relative to last year's schedule in that same time frame. But beyond that, when we hit January last year, Purdue kind of went into a 3-point slump when they got into some of those losses. And you're just not seeing that this year, right? Whether it's on the road, whether it's at home, by and large, Purdue has shot the 3 ball pretty well coming off of this stretch. Obviously, Smith has had a little bit of struggles lately, but you look at Lawyer, you look at Jones, some of the other players around them, Gillis, Edey. In reality, that trend from a percentage standpoint, I think if we looked at it, would actually be trending the other way, that they're actually shooting better from 3. Everybody probably besides Smith on this team in this stretch. So I'm just going to point out the 3-point percentage. Ends at 35%. Been a few games here lately where they've hovered around 40%. Lance has been a big part of that. If you look at his last 3 games, right, he shoots 44% today. He shoots, I think, 41% the last 2 games, if I remember right, 43%. So he shoots 44% today, 43% the game before, 43% at Penn State 2 games ago as well. And points wise, you look at what Lance has done, and there's some things we could harp on Lance today. Don't get me wrong. But points wise, over that last 3 games, with 2 of them being road games, 17, 17, and 14 in those last 3 games. And if he's shooting 40% from 3 and Lawyer's shooting, I don't know what Lawyer finished tonight. 2 of 6, so only 30%. Yeah, only 30% tonight. But both of those guys primarily have been shooting the 3 ball really well lately.
Yeah, I mean, we go back through. I have the 3-point percentage pulled up. Like they shot the last time they shot below 30, like 6% was Eastern Kentucky. They've shot. If you go back to even just the whole season, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They've shot below 35% now 8 games out of their 17? And even in a few of those is right there, that like 33% mark, where it's that point where it's like it doesn't shoot you out of the game. You don't win the game off 3-point shooting, but it definitely doesn't shoot you out. I mean, I agree. I think the other thing that with it is, I think last year it was very much you only had a couple guys that could shoot, right? Braden, there was a lot of emphasis on what Braden could do as a shooter. Fletch, Mason Gillis, as they were just kind of the big ones. David Jenkins too off the bench, I guess. But you just look at who's shooting this year. It's literally basically everybody. Braden obviously has been in a slump. We'll talk about that. Fletcher's shooting the ball pretty well. Lance is shooting the ball more or less pretty well. And then you go down the bench. Mason Gillis has been really good from 3. Camden Heide has his 1-3 a game, and he's making them basically as many as he's missing right now. You can just kind of go up and down, and so there's more people to do it. And you also have better shooters shooting. This is not like I love Ethan Morton. I think he's in a much, much better role this year. I just looked at the stats. He took 94 threes last year. Like that's not the best way to use Ethan Morton. And it's not the best way to help the team in terms of shooting in that as well. So now you have different guys, like Mason Gillis is shooting the ball really well. Fletcher Lawyer, TKR can knock him down. Braden Smith, Lance, like you can go up and down. And so that makes me more confident that the shooting can sustain, because if one guy has a bad night, it's not the end of the world. If 2 or 3, now you're going to start being in trouble. But last year, if 1 or 2 guys had a bad night shooting, they just weren't making 3-point shots, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. I guess what anything else that jumped out to you off that stat page?
I mean, the rebounding is obviously insane. There's the stats here for anybody watching on video. Lance Jones shooting well is important. I think Iowa only going 5 of 17 from 3. They are not a team that likes to shoot threes this year. They're near IU in terms of 3-point frequency, which is surprising for an Iowa team. But still, Sanford's 3 for 10. Obviously, just not letting him go nuclear is a big key in that. If we go back to, we're putting out kind of these quick keys to our keys to the game. Over on our Twitter at Boilers and Stands, kind of read through them. We had 5 for today. 1, come out strong. Maybe the first couple minutes weren't great, but they didn't get in a deficit, and then from there they bolted. 2, get Edey going. He had 15 and 12 last game against Iowa. Obviously, I would say Zach Edey got going. I don't know if you would disagree with that one, or if anybody would. No. Get back on defense. I think I read Iowa has had 7 transition points. Handle the press. From my recollection, the only turnover was that Jones pass to Smith against the press, and even that was more just like that was just a really bad pass. I don't think as much like Purdue was just handling the press this year. If a team hardcore presses a game, there's going to be a couple turnovers. I'm not saying that, but it just doesn't at the moment. It just doesn't scare me. I trust what Purdue can do. Last thing, and maybe that'll lead us into the Braden Smith talk, is Braden being aggressive. He has to continue being aggressive, even if the shot isn't falling. And that'll lead us into, I think, Braden right now, because he is an interesting player to talk about at the moment. 9 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, 4 turnovers. And my takeaway from today was he dominated that first half. I thought he was just in complete control that first half, getting whatever he wanted for Purdue, for the offense. But in that second half, he started to force, I think, a little bit. He had a couple just weird turnovers, and then the shots just not falling. He's not shooting well. Somebody had the stats. I'll try to find the comments as we go through this. But how important do you think it is to you for Braden to be able to hit shots if he's still facilitating and let's say he doesn't have a great shooting game, but he controls the game pretty much everywhere else? And I would say he did that for 30 to 35 minutes of this game, and he had a bad stretch where he didn't. So what I guess I kind of skipped the question again, but like, how important is that to you for him to be able to actually make those shots if he's still creating for everybody else?
I mean, I still think it's really important because we've seen games where Lance and Fletcher aren't both going to be scoring well. And let's not forget Fletcher was huge in that first half, right? I think he finishes with 10 points. He finishes with 10 points, but his I think 11 of those came in the first half.
10.
I want to maybe 12. 10? 10? Okay.
Yeah.
So 10 came in the first half in that stretch, but he was huge. I think he hit both of his threes in the first half. He got to his little mid-range rim where you don't understand how he can possibly hit it because he takes some really super awkward fall after taking contact. So he was big. But, over the course of the last few games, Fletcher and Lance, even if they didn't shoot at a super high percentage, are scoring effectively enough to generate points for this team to win. But we've seen games where that's not the case. We've seen games where Fletcher struggled. We've seen a couple of games where maybe Lance has struggled to shoot at a high percentage. And when that happens, it's going to be vital that Smith's hitting that little mid-range shot. More so than I'm worried about whether or not he's shooting a super high percentage from three is just being worried about him consistently hitting that elbow jumper, rolling off that high ball screen action. Because he was money there for most of the season. And it's just been a weird, funky little 3-game stretch or so from Smith here lately. And like, I've got confidence that that'll come back, both the 3-point shooting and that elbow jumper. I guess the only thing that worries me a little bit is just usage. Like, is this a sign that Braden's tired, or is this just a funky stretch? Because if this is reflective of him being tired from having to play so many minutes, I know Lance gives him a spell. I think I said the last 2 games we've seen a little run in the second half. It would be nice if we could keep the foot on the pedal a little bit longer and give Braden, because it hasn't necessarily happened when Braden was out of the game that they've gone on those runs. Sometimes it seems like it's happened right before Braden would be getting his break, and then it's like you feel like you can only sub him out for a couple of minutes. It'd be nice if we could figure out how to get him just a little bit bigger stretches throughout the game and preserve his body and his legs throughout the season. It's my takeaway personally.
Fair. The shot's going to come back. I just think that it's just going to come back. I think a lot of it right now is, I don't like doing this because we have no clue, obviously, right? We have no clue on anything like that. But just the way he's reacting on the floor a bit, it just seems like honestly, a lot of it's in his head at this point too. You can tell how bad he wants the ball to go in. He knows he's on a slump, even when he's made a couple. I think for me, like, I expect the jumper to come back, keep shooting them, keep being confident. And if it's another 3 to 5 games that he isn't, then for me, I'll probably start being more concerned about it. He doesn't need to be a 15 point per game guy. Like, if the last time he had less than 6 assists this year was Arizona, and that was the game he had 26 points. He's still like contributing a lot in a lot of ways. Still got to score the ball. Still got to make jumpers. I'm concerned a little bit about the drives to the rim, and that might be kind of related to your usage points. It seems like he has a little less pop right now, but also like Iowa today just sagged in the paint a ton on all drives and everything because they were so worried about Edey. So it's like, if teams are doing that now, Braden has to hit the pull-up, and if the pull-up isn't falling, it's just tough for him to get shots. First half, though, especially, he just dominated Iowa. He picked them apart.
I don't know. I just put that comment up from Ulamog. I don't know that that's what you're saying. Like, it was a good game, just not a good scoring game.
Yeah, I think Ulamog said, so bad game, but not enough to be worried about for anybody listening on audio, which we are on Apple and Google Podcast and Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify. Also, if you prefer this on audio as you travel or whatever. I think it was a solid game for Braden. It wasn't elite. That first half I thought was elite. I thought he struggled in the second half, and it kind of just balances out. He's still just so important for Purdue that it's just tough to take him off the floor. Like you said, you hope you can get him some more minutes off, but at the same time, they just need him. He just does so much for this team, and there's more to offense than just scoring, and Braden exemplifies that a ton. be interesting to see if maybe teams start like really daring him to shoot and dare him to score again out of the slump. You have to see how he reacts and all that. But I think there was definitely some bad with the shooting and some of the turnovers too in the second half he just forced. But at the same time, nobody on Purdue can do what he does and what he does for this team. So you just have to live with it at this point too.
And not just nobody from Purdue. There's only a handful of guards in the country that can control a game like he does. Because when he gets in his groove, and I thought he did in the first half in terms of just manipulating the defense to get position, not just for him, but to manipulate the defense where it kind of forces everybody else to do what he wants so that Zach can get the position he wants, or TKR can get the position he wants, or draw everybody in and kick out for a wide open three. You know, it's like he's controlling puppets on a string sometimes when he gets in those stretches. And there's just not too many point guards. Tyler Kolek comes to mind at Marquette when he gets into that same type of groove. Interestingly, they're both kind of going through the same shooting slump at the exact same time right now. But, you know, he's one of those guys, and there's just very few around the country that are true pass first point guards that can pick apart and control a defense like they do.
Yep, 100%.
Do we want to talk about Lance now?
Actually, there's one thing, it's kind of on topic because we've mentioned this year, the hedge, right, being the issue for Braden. And Iowa started in a hedge, and I think throughout the game they gradually went more to like a drop coverage to take away Edey. But I thought that they did something interesting today, and as I've been trying to see, like what can Purdue do to just beat this hard hedge and still like get Braden being aggressive and get good shots. And I think they showed it a little bit today. I'll go full screen here. We'll go to the board. So
sorry about that.
All right, I still have to set this up a little bit, but so you say, and then who would this be? Jones. Okay. So what they could do is roll and replace. They run it literally all the time, and it's just a simple action. And so as Braden has the ball here, right, he comes off this big. He's going to come out and hedge this, right, and he wants Braden to retreat. Now he's going to have two on the ball. As this happens, well, this roll and replace is Edey's going to dive. And so you have defender here, he's going to step in. Defender here, he's going to step in. And then this is Gillis usually right here. He's right here. This defender has to take Edey. And all this happens is Gillis just leaks out here. And so now you have two defenders on the ball way up here. You have basically 2 to 3 defenders on Edey as he rolls to the rim. And then you have Gillis replacing it. And so now even if Braden is having to really retreat, Gillis is going to end up in this area right here. And more often than not, he's going to be pretty wide open. And that's just a way I thought that they did a good job of taking away Iowa's hedge, making them really have to get out of it. Obviously, Edey being as dominant as he was, forces teams to just really play drop coverage and take away the rim. But just a simple look, or sometimes even two, what will happen is Gillis will even come up and kind of set a back screen for Edey if one of the defenders does stay. But just getting Gillis to slip out here to the top of the key, it's a release valve. He can either get an open shot, or if, say, this defender flies up here, another pass, open shot. And then at that point, you have numbers. Edey maybe can get a post touch if no three comes from it. But just a way I wanted to point out really quick that I thought Purdue did a pretty good job kind of getting around Iowa's hedge. Iowa's not a good defensive team, so you want to see it against better defensive teams as well. But good schematics. I thought it was interesting. And yes, Kraig, we can now hit on Lance Jones unless you have anything on that you wanted to mention.
No, nothing more on that. I think it's just good to see them starting to figure out how to work around that better, because obviously it's something that gave Smith and Purdue in general trouble midway in the season there as they started to see that, and then people started to replicate it. So it's nice to see some improvement in terms of how they handle that for sure. So I thought, this to me, this was more of a prototypical Jones games, like the really good and then the not so good moments, like the Indiana game to me was a perfect Lance Jones game in terms of making the right decisions, taking good shots and playing good defense in that game. This game was a little bit more up and down. We didn't really hit on the fact that we had 0 transition points, but Lance didn't really have a chance to get out and run today like he normally does in games. But, obviously shot the ball really well from 3. He got cooked by Perkins today. Like Perkins. And I I've watched Perkins now for several years, right? And there's some games you watch him and you're like, how's this dude not all Big Ten? And then you'll watch the next game and you're like, how is this even the same guy? And that's who Perkins is. Perkins can have games where he looks incredible and looks like a first team all Big Ten player. And he was in that groove today. And he was really taking advantage of that drop coverage. And I don't know his season long stats in mid range. When I've watched him before, I haven't seen him be like just superb in that mid range game, but he was superb today. And then when you started worrying about that, when Zach kind of tried to step up a little bit, then he got to the rim on Zach a few times. He just kind of used a change of pace to really quickly make a burst and score before Zach could recover and try to block him there. So, I mean, Perkins was all in his bag, and Lance obviously struggled with him there. Not everything was against Lance, but a lot of them were. And obviously there was a bad read here or there, but then you turn around and Lance did this in the IU game too. And Hummel said it on the broadcast. And we've talked before about last year, there were some times where you just needed a dude, for better or worse, that has never been scared of a shot in his life and is going to take it like he would take that shot if the score was 4-4, 2 minutes into the game.
Yeah.
And he does that. And he just stepped in and buried that three like it was nothing when Iowa had cut the run to 8. And that was it. That was game right there. Like, he just ended any chance or thought that Iowa might come back into it. And that confidence is so important on this team, I think. He just never lets the moment get into his head. I think Fletcher's done a lot better job of that too. He struggled in the second half, but just throughout the year this year, I think he's done a better job of just not getting caught in the moment. But I think Lance exemplifies that. Never been scared. You're probably too young to remember. There used to be no fear t-shirts. Do you remember those? Like no fear t-shirts? And I guarantee people in the chat remember like no fear hats, no fear t-shirts, no fear bumper stickers. Like, I need to buy some of those, like find them on eBay or something from when they used to make it, and just send Lance an entire wardrobe of it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Jones, you had good, like you said, the shot making is no fear. Like, he really just has none. Is willing to take shots at literally any point in time. Sometimes that leads to some bad shots, but the defense is interesting too. And Taterology said, I thought Jones did a solid job on Perkins. He made him take a lot of long and mid-range twos. Perkins just did a great job of hitting them. I think that's a combo. I think there's a combo of like what you said, Kraig, of like Perkins at times just kind of cooked Jones. At times he also hit some tough ones. And Iowa's also a team that they take an insane amount of mid-range shots. They are like near, I can pull up the exact stats pretty quick, but they are right at the top in the country in like percentage of shots coming from mid-range, 94th percentile. So like, I could do this quick math. They're probably like top 25 in percentage of shots coming from the mid-range. Purdue is a team that gives up an insane amount of mid-range shots. And so you have that little bit of a battle. I think that's why you see Perkins a lot of times
by design.
Yeah, by design.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. By designs with Edey's drop coverage, right? They're going to take away the rim with Edey. When you're going through a screen, Jones or whoever it is, Morton, Heidi, whatever, is going to fight over the top and just kind of try to force the ball handler into that 10, 15-foot area. Perkins loves that area, though, and Iowa in general loves getting to that spot. I thought Perkins also just did a good job of being aggressive. And at times, I think in the first half especially, and I know Perkins got cooking more in the second half, but like, it just felt like Purdue was a step slow on defense at times. Just some of the rotations, I think they were. I don't quite know. I wasn't quite able to catch it enough. Like, I wasn't able to process it enough live to really know. So maybe after I rewatch, it'll be better. But like, it just seemed like sometimes they were kind of switching Edey and TKR onto it. Sometimes they weren't. I didn't know if it didn't seem like there was any rhyme or reason though. And so it just never quite seemed comfortable. You combine that with Perkins being aggressive, Jones having to, get through screens, and he didn't do a great job of that. That's going to allow a lot of mid-range shots, and then also credit to Perkins for making them as well. But yeah, one bad pass for sure that I can think of for Jones, but then just aggressive. He shoots the ball really well. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have too much more on Jones. I guess I'm relating to the defensive point because, like, okay, actually, I'll ask you this really quick first. Like, what did you think of Purdue's defensive performance today? Like, just quick rating, scale, whatever you want to do it.
I mean, it's Iowa, right? What's Iowa rank in Ken Palm in offense? I'm just curious.
17th.
Right. Top 20 offensive team in the country, and we held them to 70 points. So I don't think that's a bad performance. I feel like anytime you play Iowa, if you keep them under 80, you're doing okay. Right.
Yep.
And like, I thought there was some times where they cooked us. Obviously, I already mentioned Perkins, but man, there's just a ton of people on that Iowa team that have a lot of offensive capability. Krieg, I think, just his ability to hit mid-range and 10 to 15 foot shots, but he can also get in and work the post. Obviously, we've seen Freeman, what he's done as a freshman, didn't really have a big game tonight. But then you've got Sanford, and you've got Dix, Josh Dix. Also, all of those guys have quite a bit of game to their offense and can score in different ways. And Iowa shares the ball well in terms of just their actions and how fast they can swing that ball around. So, like, I'm fine giving up 70 points to Iowa at home, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't look at it and say, like, wow, we did a heck of a job defensively outside of Zach Edey protecting the rim. Like I said, I really think he should have finished with 5 blocks. Outside of Zach, I don't know that anybody was incredible defensively, but as a team, I will take 70 scored by Iowa at home any day.
That was where, so I was eventually getting to it. Tariq Kamel says our defense has to get better come March. That was the 4th best, or how do I want to word this? That was the 4th worst Iowa offensive performance of the season. Like, Iowa was just good offensively. Like, Purdue actually has the 5th as well when they came to Mackey Arena. So, like, the 2 of the 5 worst offensive performance for Iowa come against Purdue. The others is Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Iowa State, which are all top 20 KenPom teams, by the way. Like, there's definitely things to improve. There is, but it's just at the same time, Purdue is solid enough that as long as you get Edey going plus a shooter, like Edey plus a shooter plus solid defense is going to result in a lot of wins for Purdue, just because of how good they are offensively. You just have to be solid in terms of like the upper tier of teams, right? Like if you know they're 17th right now in defensive KenPom, they're or 14th, sorry. So because Tariq Kamel said we need to get our D back to top 10 KenPom by March. They're at 14. It's a pretty marginal difference between 10 and 14. Like it's probably a matter of 10 to 15 points throughout the season or something like that. Stick around that area. Obviously, keep up the offense, and Purdue will give them a chance to do what they need to do come March. Go throw back up the stats here. We talked about Jones. We talked about Braden. Fletch has 12 points, 5-10 shooting, 2 of 6 from 3, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 turnovers. I thought he did, for the most part, a fairly good job defensively. Iowa, I think, schemed pretty well. They hit him with a lot of flare screens where they could get Sanford open threes. So he wasn't great getting through those. I don't think he wasn't getting like absolutely torched. Like it wasn't one of those games where it's like Lawyer needs to come out because of the defense. Offensively, I think he forced 2 shots. One of them was a drive. One of them was a 3 that just not in rhythm at all. Everything else, I thought he just let the game come to him. You'd like to see, like, in terms of you're looking at the pure stats, he's 2 of 6 from 3. You'd like to see like 3 of 6 for fit. But like, I don't have too much on Lawyer. Besides that, I thought like did a pretty good job. Wasn't like an elite game. Solid.
I thought
Lawyer game.
I really thought Fletch held up defensively relatively well. Unless I think there was a time or 2 he got switched on to Perkins, but outside of that, I thought he did fine. Well, he was mainly on Sanford, right?
Yeah. Whenever Sanford,
I thought. Yeah. I thought he did relatively well on him, and obviously that play late in the game where he gets his hand on the ball and hits it into the backcourt was a good defensive moment there for him, but. Really, when you just look up and down this team today, like I was thinking about this as we were like, where are we going to go next? Is there anybody on this team today, and you've already seen the plus minuses, but is there anybody on this team today that you're like, man, they didn't have a good game today? Like they didn't make positive contributions today?
No, because really, like I thought First gave good energy. We'll at least hit on Morton a bit because he had a good stint. Gillis, TKR both had good. Yeah, like really.
Yeah, maybe like Cam's maybe the only one because he finishes 1 of 5. He picks up 3 personal fouls. A couple of them were not good fouls, but he still has 4 rebounds and he gets that layup. So, like, not a bad game, not a good game for Cam relative to some of his others. But this is a few games now where, post Nebraska, where by and large, you're like, everybody's pretty much given positive contributions when they come in one way or another. And we've seen that twice from Ethan now. I thought Caleb played really well when he was in today. TKR, I thought, gave some really good minutes today when he was in also. So I just, general team effort or team contributions all the way around, even though you had a dude in the middle of the paint put up 30 and 18,
Yeah. There it is. The comment from Shank Hawks, and she's just talking about Purdue. There was 9 players that played for Purdue today. She said all 9 had a rebound and 8 had an assist. The only
and all 9 scored. So,
the only one that didn't, and the only one that didn't have an assist is Ethan Morton. Which all 9 score, all 9 have a rebound, 8 have an assist. Like, just you got contributions from pretty much everywhere. I agree. Heidi probably had the worst game out of the bunch, and he only played 8 minutes for that as well.
Right.
Yeah, it's just it goes back to the it popped in my brain. That was something I wanted to mention, and Hummel kind of mentioned it too. Is like this team has 9 guys played today, right? 9 guys, and are we safe saying the rotation's at 9 players, right? At this point in the season, it's a 9-man rotation. The only one that hasn't started for Purdue is Camden Heidi. Everybody else has had some starts in their career, and it's not even just like a one-off. All 8 others have started, I would assume, double-digit games. I guess I would need to quickly double-check first. He started a large chunk of last season. Gillis has started. Morton started all of last year. I'm not saying in terms of talent maybe that Purdue has 8 players that would start on every team, but at the same time, Purdue has 8 players with significant experience in the starting role. Now you have some off the bench. Goes back to just the versatility of this team and what they can do. We say it every game is like it's not a matter of this player needs to play more than this player in general. It's a game by game thing because quite literally all 9 can give contributions. And even if you want to include Colvin as the 10th, like there are spots where he can come in and give you good shooting and things like that. Just impressive how well-rounded this team is. And that was when we came into the season, right? Our big our quote unquote concern was like, man, how's Painter going to get all 11 of these guys minutes? And now the rotation is going to dwindle down, and it might get cut to 8 at some point too. But the depth,
I don't think
it's
so.
not quite where we thought preseason, but it's good.
Yeah, I think these 9 keep playing, and I still think, there's a couple of people in the chat saying we got to find Colvin minutes. I still think there's gonna be somewhere along the way where Colvin's important. It wouldn't shock me if it was in a tournament game. If Purdue was struggling to score, that Colvin gets tossed in, bangs a couple of threes because he's gonna take 2 in the first 4 minutes that he's in there.
First 4 possessions,
and if he's hot, Painter's gonna ride him.
Yep.
He's shown that. It's not that long ago that Colvin played 16 minutes against a top 20 team. So I think there's still a chance that we're going to see. I think he's primarily going to ride this 9-man rotation, but I will not be shocked at all if Colvin gets run in a game, if he's got some guys struggling. But like we've said, these last 3 games, pretty much everybody that's come in has done something positive for the team. So you're not really searching any further down that bench in that time. But
yeah,
that's my take, I guess.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't spend this much time talking about Colvin in a game that Purdue wins.
Yes, I do. I do, though.
Fair enough. Who's Johnny says, yeah, but guys, don't you think Colvin will start next season? I don't see, for me, this is not the year where you try to get players ready for next year. You go I think
when I was saying yes, I do, I was answering that question.
Yeah, okay. And so Colvin's talented. He'll have a full offseason, can definitely take a jump. I don't get why you'd want to do that right now. This doesn't feel like the time of, hey, let's get Colvin ready for next year. Like you said, it's just right now is not the time to do it. You have the team that has all the talent to be able to go far in March. Obviously, I know people would be like, hey, you want Colvin ready for March. If you have 9 guys, if Painter has 9 guys he fully trusts, it come March, he's going to be happy with that. And it's not a knock on Colvin. It's just how talented and loaded Purdue is, especially kind of at the position he plays right now. He's going to be great. roster just hasn't quite worked out for him to come on as a freshman and be elite. And it's not like an uncommon thing. So excited to see where he goes. He'll have, like you said, I agree with you. He's going to have a couple games. What was it, 2 years ago when Newman hadn't played in a while? He comes in against Penn State in the Big Ten tourney. I could see a game like that, right, where it's whatever, because there's going to be at some point a game where Purdue just comes out crazy flat, like across the board. Colvin comes in, he hits a three, maybe he gets a transition dunk, brings some energy back. And like you said, Painter's going to ride with the guys. Like Painter is going to ride with who he thinks best. If it's Colvin, he'll ride with him. That was probably too much talk about Colvin and all that, but just goes to show where this program's at, where this depth's at, that we can have these type of conversations and then be legitimate conversations. So do you have anything more on Colvin?
No.
All right. Go through a couple more of the players and then probably start wrapping things up. Well, I guess let's hit on that TKR really quick. 4 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. I thought he had good energy. I thought he played pretty well defensively. It's a good defensive matchup. Obviously, the TKR goes down with an injury. It didn't look great. He does come back out to the bench after. We obviously have no word on that. The normal Purdue guys that you follow on Twitter, they will have the news. If we somehow hear anything first, we'll definitely let you guys know. But Newbert and all them, Casey, they'll have the news of what TKR is, if he's good, if he's not. Hopefully it's just hopefully it was just one of those that hurt in the moment and he's going to be fine, or maybe he has to miss Michigan because after Michigan, they don't play till the following Sunday at Rutgers. So maybe he has one game off. In terms of play, well, I guess, do you have anything in terms of injury? And then we'll hit on his play a little bit.
When he came back out, it looked like he was putting a little bit of weight on it and whatnot. Obviously I'm not a doctor, so but it didn't seem like it more seemed like that jammed and then his knee kind of bent like forward. I hyperextended my knee 3 different times in high school. And I almost wonder if it's that where that knee snaps back and like kind of hyperextends that ligament or something like that. And a lot of times that's just not too bad. A little bit of ice and some rest and can come back after a few days or whatever. So hopefully it's that and not anything more severe. Don't want to really speculate. That's just kind of what went through my head when I saw that live. I don't know. Maybe we have some sports doctors in here in the chat that can weigh in.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully he's back. If he misses a game or two, hopefully that is the extent of that. In terms of play, though, only 14 minutes in part because of that injury. I don't have too much on him. Solid game, aggressive on the boards, which is what you want to see. And
I think he's getting really good at that big-to-big passing. I just think there's been a few passes in the last few games where his touch on that pass is and the angle that he takes to make that pass to Zach has just been really good. And he doesn't fire a bullet when he does it. Some of the guys, like Mason's good at it too, but a lot of times Mason will boom, just snap, fire a bullet to Zach. And it's amazing Zach has the hands to catch those things that he does. I don't think too many 7-footers around the country can, but TKR does a really nice job of putting a nice touch and angle on that ball and getting to where Zach can handle it super easy and go right into his motion.
Yep. No, I agree. That's a good call out from you on that point. As we bring the players back up, only a few more really to kind of touch on. We already hit on Edey. First, only 8 minutes. He has 2 points, 2 rebounds, and assist. It's just a tough spot for him in the rotation behind Gillis and TKR, with Edey being as dominant as he is. I thought today, especially though, he gave good energy. Sometimes he comes in and I think it's a little flat. This one, I thought he had good energy, gets a couple boards. I don't have too much more on first.
No, I thought he gave good energy. Like you said, I thought he played, showed some flashes of good defense in that stretch too. He misses that bunny, there was a couple of guys around him, but we kind of talked about that before, about just kind of frustration and he's right there. And it seems like he has a relatively clean look after he gives a ball fake. And for whatever reason, it seems like that ball rims out about 50% of the time when he does that.
Yep.
And then I'm sure it sucks for him. I'm sure it's really frustrating for him.
Yeah. Well, he's shooting 53% from 2 right now on the year. A lot of that coming in that December stretch. Last guy, Ethan Morton. he had a really good stretch in that first half, especially in his 4 or 5 minutes. Really good defense, has the pull up mid range. When he got the steal and was going for the layup, I'm very glad that Braden was following because
Yeah.
it was a great defensive play. I had no confidence in Morton making that layup, like absolutely none. I was hoping Braden was going to be there. He was, at least his 2 points still, but I think Morton's getting more comfortable. He's just, or not even comfortable, but more confident. I think, like, I really think this 10, I forget what he plays today, 8-9 minutes. This, like, 8 to 12, 14-minute role. I think it just really is what he needs. It's he can come in, give really hard energy defensively. Does what he does offensively, just kind of keeping the ball moving. You saw today they sag off and they dare him to shoot a 3. That is obviously the concern offensively, but he's just so good defensively that Painter can bring him in, be like, hey, just needed things to switch up, can handle the ball in a pinch, especially as that secondary ball handler. So I think Painter trusts him. I think Morton seems to be becoming more and more confident in his role. You just see a little bit of that swagger come out, and that's a good thing for Purdue. Because then if they need him for 20 minutes, like, I trust him to play that many if it's needed.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I mean, he continues to show good, especially over the last few games. A couple of different times, he showed some really, really good defensive moments, like he's always done. But I thought there was a stretch, especially towards the end of last year and early in the season, where there were some moments where he maybe wasn't playing as good defensively as he had at his prime, I guess, in that regard. But I think maybe part of that too is we're starting to play some Big Ten teams that maybe don't have quite as quick and dynamic guards as some of the teams that we face in the non-conference. But really good in those moments. Definitely becoming more comfortable with the ball. I still get super nervous every time I see him leading a fast break. But that confidence is coming. Hit that little mid-range shot. That's pretty big to me. I don't know that leads to more scoring down the road, but if he can come in and make 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3 whenever he is getting his minutes, and if they're going to leave him wide open and just at least contribute something from a scoring standpoint, as long as he can spell and give some good defensive moments, because you've seen a couple of different times where he's come in the game and he may do nothing scoring wise, but we may have a good 4, 5, 6 minute, really good defensive stretch, and other people are scoring the ball around him that kind of allows Purdue to stretch the lead a little bit or pull away a little bit. So I think he still brings a ton of value. You said, I think this is a much better spot for him on this year's team where he can bring that value in a 10-minute sample size.
Yep. We'll hit on the rotation and then get to some of the questions or comments. Scott White said the fact that we can stretch a lead with Zach on the bench is fantastic, which does lead me into the rotations for today. For anybody watching on YouTube, if you are also watching, please like and subscribe. We're 52 minutes into this. We're going to start wrapping things up, but we really do appreciate everybody tuning in. Like, subscribe, follow us on Twitter at Boilers in Stands, just for some. We had, put out a couple graphics, different what Purdue stands in terms of their quad ranking against opponents, shot chart showing which area, what Boilers shooting best from each area on the floor. So here's the rotation, though, against Iowa. I don't think anything's too much out of the ordinary in terms of rotation. Morton comes in first today for Jones. They go back to that. The last couple of games, it had been Edey, or they've kind of alternated between Morton and Edey. In terms of minutes, though, yeah, I don't think there's anything too crazy. I think the thing to point out, if you look below Josh First's name, it says Purdue margin. And so that number represents what that plus or minus was for that unit on the floor. And you see that 14 to 8 minute mark in that first half. They're plus 15 in that point. Just a big run. And they go plus 5 without Edey on the floor, or plus 10, without Edey on the floor. In that 4-minute stretch. And that really broke the game open too. That kind of goes back to the comment I had up of being able to extend this lead. There's enough pieces that at times, that's just how basketball works, right? You each make substitutions and it's a puzzle and you go back and forth, and sometimes things just click for a 4 or 5 minute stretch. Doesn't mean you necessarily get it later, because in the second half that, a similar lineup was -3 without Edey, but things can just click at the right moment. You get a big lead and it changes the game. So do you have anything in terms of the rotation today? Anything stand out to you?
I mean, not a lot. I think it's always interesting just to see we don't know what happens in practice, right? But you see what happens in a game, and then he may tweak that, cam for Ethan. And I just, I'd like to know sometimes, like, well, what is it from last game to this game, or did you see something in practice that made you decide to switch that? Obviously, I think Ethan's just been so good defensively in the last couple of games that maybe he rides with them there instead. There was one stretch. It was who were the 5 when Zach went to the bench with the second foul?
That was in the first half. That was Braden, Lance, Mason, Edey, and First.
That's not the stretch I'm thinking of. There was a stretch in there where Lance was on the court and Smith wasn't.
That was for
Edey
1
was
minute.
Okay. Well, I was scared that 1 minute.
Fair.
Whatever that lineup was.
They were -2 in that 1 minute with Smith off the floor.
Okay. Not a real big sample size, but
no.
Whatever that lineup is, those 5, whenever I see it on the court, I'm always like, eh. And then, like you said, it seems like it's just for a minute or maybe 2 minutes, and then Painter's moving out of that rotation also. So,
yep. There's comments saying like Braden playing 39 minutes is too much. Obviously, you would like to see that lower. It's just like, what do you do? Like, you can trust Jones and Morton for a little bit as ball handlers. Like the offense just takes such a dip when Braden. Actually, I should look up the on-off numbers while we're talking. Maybe I'll make a post about that. Braden does not need, like, it would be so much better if he could play 35 minutes a game instead of 39, but it's just tough. And there's just these stretches. That second half, Iowa's just sticking around. They're keeping it at that 8 to 12 point march. And I'm sure Painter's worried, like, if I bench Braden for even 2 minutes, like, what if Iowa might just go on an 8-0 run here? And now it's you're in a close ball game, you bring him back in. It's a tough balance. I'm like, I would love to see Braden be like 34 to 35. If he could get like a 2 minute rest, 2 to 3 minute rest each half, that would be great. I just don't think he can always do that. I really don't. I think he's that valuable to this team. Just setting up the offense. The offense just isn't the same without him.
I think we've seen some stretches where Lance has run point and been okay, though. Like, I feel like look, they're the number 2 team in the country. They've only lost 2 games all year. So, not to be critical here in any way, shape, or form, but there's been some times where I thought, all right, like maybe let him work through that a moment. Where Lance was at the point, because it seemed like earlier in the year, like, Lance did okay in some of those stretches, and he's gotten much better about how he delivers passes to Zach, about attacking off that high ball screen and getting that lob up to Zach, where he wasn't maybe real early in the year. I don't know. I feel like just with the way Braden has looked the last few games, I'd like to see maybe just a little bit more trust and let it go. Even if you see like a little quick 6-point run, like, maybe trust that a few more minutes and see. Because I'm a little bit worried about whether Braden's just getting worn down, and I do not want to see a worn down Braden Smith come March. You're on mute, Joe.
I don't know when that happened. Oh, it's my. Am I good? Do I sound good?
Yep, you're good.
All right. Purdue's offense dips from the 99th percentile to the 48th percentile when Braden is off the floor this year. They're 20 points per 100 possessions worse. The defense is like, it is 0.7. Like, the defense is exactly the same. So they're 20 points per 100 possessions worse with Braden off the floor. Obviously, Braden's so good that's like, it's not like that's like unexpected. But I think it just points out like how good he is. The effective field goal percentage drops by 10%. Let me see if I can get some of the more traditional stats here.
I get it.
With Braden on the floor, Purdue shooting 43% from 3. With him off, they're shooting 26% from 3. I'm not saying, like, I would love if Braden could sit 6 minutes a game. I understand at times, like, in my head, I get why he doesn't, because it's just like, he just can't at times. But you're right too. Like, you want him to save his legs and stuff. I don't know. Like
It's
maybe
a tough.
like
I
do
mean,
you
it's a
just
tough
take,
conversation, and
yeah. Do you just take the hit for 5 minutes and be like, we're good enough to come back just to rest, and then you rest Braden, and you
I
hope
mean
you hope in
what
those minutes that you live.
that's what Mike Woodson would do with that NBA mentality.
Well,
Got to save him for the playoffs.
yeah, that's going
I
well.
don't know that we
Yes.
need to be taking notes off Mike Woodson, but you know
Not
what
at
I'm
the
saying.
moment.
Like,
No, I get you.
where's I get, to me, it's a little bit of a question of what's the end goal, and when do you want him to be
That's
the
fair.
best? And if it makes this game a dicey and a 4 or 5 point game, but Braden gets 5, 6 more minutes, or not 5 or 6 more minutes, but 6 minutes of rest. There's the piece of me that's like, I'll live with that. But
I think Sidney Maciejewski brings up a good point. Purdue fans would throw a fit if we let a lead slip just to rest one guy. I'm not. That is true. Like if Braden sits for 3 minutes and Iowa goes on a big run, there is definitely going to be some like, hey, why did Braden sit? But like we said, I think we've hashed out of like there is good and bad to it. You need Braden to be good, but at the same time, if you want to be good in March, do you just sit now to see what happens later? It's a tough combo. I don't think there's necessarily a right answer. It was a good discussion though there. Do you have anything else on that, on the rotation? If not, we'll get to some of these comments and then head out of here. I'm sure, watch some football and stuff like that. Or I don't know, you probably got like sheep or something to do or attend to. Attend to.
Yeah. No, I don't have any sheep work to do. I do have some things to get to, but no sheep work. But even so, I'd be watching college basketball instead of the playoffs. So
fair enough.
All right. Comments.
We've kind of hit on this. John Hillary, should we be worried about Braden's shooting stats continue to tread down? Right now, I think we're both we're not panicked, but we are monitoring. Like we expect it to come up, but it kind of goes back to the fresh legs, and is that a fair statement?
Yep, for sure.
Jeremy Hunter, any word on TKR's lower leg? Getting that leg caught under him looked rough, hoping no fracture. We have no word. Same with you, just hoping that it's nothing too serious.
And I've been monitoring the most typical Twitter sites and reporters like Casey and Brian throughout this show to see whether there's been any news. And I haven't seen either of them tweet anything out yet. So I don't know if it's embedded in some of that video, but I would have thought if there would have been any indication one way or another, those guys would have got it out pretty quick. So my guess is probably something that's got to go back and be looked at and go from there.
Yep. BK1 Bennett said Purdue's bench made a huge difference today. Double the points of Iowa's bench, double the rebounds too. Better effort, 100%. We hit on the bench, like just really good overall. Christopher Tice, right? Tice. He throws up the shushing emoji. Lance to the Iowa crowd. It's what Lance does, right? He's not afraid of the moment. That I don't think the lead would have slipped anyways, but that 3 by Jones at the end where he shushes the crowd just absolutely killed any momentum Iowa had. Definitely put the game away, was a dagger.
Dude, when they blew that whistle right after that, when Fran called the timeout, I thought they teed him up for a second.
Oh,
for that. And I was like, no, like that can't be the Lance Jones moment. Like, I was glad they did not tee him up for that.
Wouldn't have been shocked for Big Ten refs to do that though. That's for sure. Tariq Kamel, this is another just hope TKR is okay, but if there is one starter we can survive without, it is him. Fair, because there are 3 options at the 4. Obviously, I'm a big fan of TKR. Like, not every game is going to be his, but there are games that he's going to contribute a ton. And I think especially the last 3 weeks, he's really started to find his groove for the most part. Hope everything's good. This goes back to the shushing. Brad Prather says Jones 3 at the end was a backbreaker.
It ended it.
Shancock,
that was game.
Yeah. Shancock.
It reminds me of hold on a second. Let me get this.
No, my bad.
Okay. You play pickup basketball?
Of course.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And whatever. Go to 21, win by 2, or go to 15, win by 2. Whatever you guys are playing to. Right? And you play 1s and 2s. And I don't know if you did. That's what we always did. We played 1s and 2s, not 2s and 3s.
Yeah.
Shoot that 3 ball, the 2 ball, right?
Yep.
For last 2 points you need, call game, right? Walk away, call game. That's what Lance did. We were up 8 already, but that was game. Lance jacked that thing up, walked away, called game. End of story.
100%. Shancock says, question seriously, are we rooting for Villanova tonight? I'm going to be honest, I have no clue who they're playing. I assume
They're
UConn
playing
would be my
UConn.
guess.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're playing UConn.
I don't care personally, but
I just
that's
hate Danny Hurley. Like, there is no coaching personality in all of sports that I despise more. So I am rooting against UConn every single game that I watch.
fair enough. Tariq Kamel said, Lance Jones is the difference in breaking the press, shooting, defending, and pace this season. Lance Jones, 100%. Even in a game like today where we mentioned, like, hey, this wasn't like the elite Lance Jones game, still just makes differences even through some of the flaws that he has. Rowlett Boiler says, Morin played nice D today. Yeah, we mentioned that. The really good stretch, I thought, just helping kind of get the momentum for Purdue. He goes off the floor, and then they continue that momentum as well. Taterology. We already mentioned this one, but so we'll go to Walden Evans. Is Iowa a tourney team? I think they're a bubble team contingent on how they play Illinois, Wisconsin, Northwestern. I don't think they're a tourney team. I have not thought they've been a tourney team all year. You go through what they are. I think they're a solid non-tourney team. Like, I think they're pretty talented for what a non-tourney team will be. But you kind of just go through their resume. Non-conference, their best wins neutral against Seton Hall, and then their next best Arkansas State at home. Those are non-conference specific. They have beat Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota in Big Ten play. They also, I'm just scanning through their schedule. They have Wisconsin once more, Illinois twice. They don't have Purdue more. And they don't play Michigan. Oh, they play Michigan State once. So very much some of these teams that, oh, wow. I'm really scanning through now. They play like 5 games against tournament teams the rest of the way. So it's just going to be tough for them to get quality wins to get there. Do you have any thoughts on Iowa being a tourney team or not?
They are not. Those are my thoughts.
Go. Yep. From Blake Widmer, very active in the chat always. We appreciate you tuning in, Blake, and everybody else. If you're here, please like, subscribe. Just helps us out a ton. Blake Widmer says, Boiler up in an airplane and airport, so didn't really see the game. How would you rate our performance? I want an offense score A- and a defense score C+. Those are both question marks. So I assume he's asking, like, what would we rate our offense, Purdue's offense and Purdue's defense today on like a grading scale? I would say defense is like a B-, B to B-, because it just didn't, like, the numbers were good. It just didn't always look good. Offense, I'll say an A- because it wasn't like an insane 3-point shooting game. But it was pretty high up there for me. What about you?
I would go with a solid B on defense. Iowa at home, 70 points.
Yeah.
Held them their 4th worst offensive output of the year. So I would maybe even a B+ if I'm being serious. If Perkins didn't just make us look silly sometimes throughout that game, I think I'd be able to rate us a little bit higher there. Offense. A-, B. I put them about the same. I'm going to say B+ on both of them.
Fair enough. So, quality game wasn't like Purdue's best performance, but still very good enough to get a win on the road, which is rare to do in the Big Ten this year. David Dillman, this is just talking about TKR. He said he did come back out to the sideline shortly after. Hopefully was a good sign. Was a really tough fall. Word probably just hasn't come out yet. You kind of mentioned that before. Just nothing really come out. Probably we'll have to run some tests or something like that. 2 more comments. Who's Johnny said should be a good matchup between Braden and McDaniel. McDaniel will not be playing in Michigan because it is one of the road games, and McDaniel is suspended for 6 straight road games. This is one of those. So it's going to be a lot of Jalen Wellen, George Washington III. Also, he's the freshman that doesn't really get a ton of minutes. And then they're going to play 4 power forwards all at the same time, like on the floor together. I guess we can briefly, we don't have to go long on this. Anything just as we kind of think through this Purdue match or Michigan matchup really quick as they play Tuesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern tip. Anything brief notes that stand out to you about that game?
We should beat them by 30. Miles Colvin should get a lot of minutes in the second half, and Willie Berg should see the floor. If McDaniel was coming, I would say There would be some reason to worry because McDaniel is the type of guard in a Boo Buie, Jameer Young type style in terms of the way he plays and what he can do when he gets going that could hurt us. But without him, I just don't see any way Michigan keeps this even relatively close.
Yeah, I think the only thing in terms of that stand out is like Michigan will play 4 power forwards. And so it's just the matchups that happen with that. They'll start with Llewellyn and Burnett, who are both guards, and then 3 forwards. Like Lawyer's going to have to be guarding his 6 foot. What was Terrence Williams? 6'7", 6'8". At times, like Lance or Braden might have to be guarding like a 6'8" dude. So they'll have that size if they want. On the other end, though, I don't think Michigan can just keep up defensively with that lineup as well. So just give and take there. That's the one thing that stands out. Michigan can just be gigantic if they want, and how does that affect Purdue's 3-guard lineup? From JB, Kentucky is probably the one team that scares me the most. I think he's talking about March Madness, and then I know they just got their big just became eligible. They're 7'2" freshman. I don't know a lot about him. I don't know a lot about Kentucky, to be honest, right now, but I know they've been playing well, really high octane offense. Defense is just okay. We'll talk about March, I'm sure, as we get later. Do you have any thoughts on Kentucky or who scares you the most if we're looking way ahead?
I mean, Kentucky and UConn are up there in terms of teams, just with the type of guard play that I think could give us some trouble. I don't even really look to see whether they have a dominant big or not, because I don't think that's necessarily what predicates what can give Purdue trouble. But yeah, I think, and I haven't really got to watch North Carolina play at all this year.
Yeah,
I just kind of see what they're doing from afar, and you've got Baycott, so can at least maybe potentially slow down Zach a little bit. But I haven't watched much further than that. I do in general. I know we've chatted about this briefly, but I think from seeing some of the teams play live and then watching some of the others on TV, I think the Big 12 is really overrated this year. In terms of the top end.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a lot of good teams in the Big 12, but I think they lack, like, some of these last few years, they've had 3 or 4 teams that I thought could all make the Final Four. I don't think there's a single team in there. If I was to pick my Final Four, I want to have a Big 12 team in there. Put it that way.
Fair enough. I watched the Big 10, so if it's outside the Big 10, I'm going to be honest, I don't have great answers for you. Come March, I will deep dive everything that we need, but right now, I don't know. So, fun way to end the show there. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Kraig, do you have anything else you want to throw out there? Just anything.
No, I've got no like major ending points here, other than, man, enjoy. Your Big Ten road games aren't easy, even if they're not tournament teams. And Purdue went to IU, had a 20-point lead at one point. Purdue went to Iowa, had a 19-point lead at one point. Kept both of those teams arm's length the entire time and won both of those games easily, if we're being honest. Enjoy the fact that Purdue seems to have turned the corner in terms of what they're doing road game wise. It'll be interesting, obviously, when we play what I would consider to be a top 5 Big Ten team on the road. But it's nice to see them taking care of business on the teams that they should take care of business with.
Yeah, I mean, we looked through really quick. The road games left at Rutgers, at Wisconsin, at Ohio State, at Michigan, and at Illinois. Wisconsin and Illinois, obviously 2 very good teams. Rutgers is scary just because it's at the rack, and that place is going to be hopping. Purdue is a much, much more talented team, though. And then the Ohio State, Michigan, like, they're not. I mean, Ohio State's much better than Michigan, but 2 games that don't exactly strike fear, but also it's the road, so anything can happen in the Big Ten. We will be back Tuesday night for a late tip, a 9:00 Eastern tip on everybody's favorite streaming service, Peacock.
Woohoo!
9:00 tip at Mackey. Purdue takes on Michigan without Doug McDaniel. We'll be live after the game, a few minutes, probably 5-10 minutes, whatever, after the game ends. Hopefully it's a blowout, so then we can keep it a little bit of a shorter show and head back home. But we do appreciate everybody tuning in. On the way out, please hit the like and subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. We're on Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts as well, if you prefer those there. And if you do, give us a 5-star review. Just helps us out. Follow us on Twitter at Boilers and Stands for just more content, live game updates, in between stuff, all that. You can follow Kraig on Twitter at Kraig Bowers 34, and you can follow me on Twitter at Joe Jackson CBB. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. We will see you after the game Tuesday, 9 o'clock tip against Michigan. And what does Bragg say? As always, hammer down.
Boiler up.
Yeah.